Hey, hello Bio. We're continuing on with Chapter 6. We're on Section 3 today, and the title of this section is Biodiversity, so this is going to be an important word that you're going to need to know the definition to. It's going to be on the next slide here, but up to this point we've talked about how humans can affect the biosphere and all the negative things that they're happening, and the reason why we need to know all these negative things is because of the concept known as biodiversity, and because we need to protect that. So we'll go ahead and get started by starting with what is the value of biodiversity. So another word for biodiversity is biological diversity, just shorten it up, and is the sum total of the genetically based variety of all organisms in the biosphere. So what that means is it's basically just all of the different living things that we have all together in our biosphere is known as biodiversity. It's just how different all the things are within our living ecosystems and why, and we're going to need to protect all these different living things. And so within biodiversity we have different other types of diversity. We have ecosystem diversity, and this is just a variety of habitats, communities, and ecological processes in the living world, which is so just basically the differences amongst ecosystems. And then we have, again, getting even a little more specific, we have species diversity, and this is simply just the number of different species in the biosphere. And then to end it all, we have genetic diversity, which is the sum total of all the different forms of genetic information carried by all organisms living on the earth today. So those three, genetic, species, and ecosystem diversity, all fall under the biggest category of biodiversity. So those are all going to be really important things you're going to need to know. And then again, as alluded to, humans in the biosphere, so why do we need to protect biodiversity? Why is it important? And the first reason why it's important, because it's one of our greatest natural resources on Earth, because there's various species of many kinds, whether it's plants, animals, bacteria. They have provided us with foods, industrial products, and medicines, which includes things like painkillers, antibiotics, heart drugs, antidepressants, and anti-cancer drugs have all come from natural living things in our biosphere. So we definitely need to protect them because there's a lot we still haven't discovered. So there could be the next big cure to a disease might be out there growing in a plant somewhere in the rainforest that no one has ever seen before. So we need to protect our Earth, all the living things. We need to keep the biodiversity high. So there are, since again, title of this whole section, or this whole chapter is Humans in the Biosphere. So what are our current threats that humans are providing to biodiversity? So human activities have been, we've altered habitats. Again, we build shopping malls and replace a forest. That's not a natural habitat. We've hunted species to extinction, and we've introduced toxic compounds into food webs, and we've introduced foreign species to new environments. All of these things can affect the biodiversity of individual areas or across the entire Earth. So our first concept is going to be extinction. So hopefully we've heard this term before, but when a species is considered to be extinct, it's when it disappears from all or part of its range. So it's when it's been wiped off of the face of the Earth, basically, is when it's been extinct, or it can go extinct in a certain area that it used to live and no longer lives. And before a species kind of makes it to that extinction mark, when its population size is declining in a way that places it in danger of extinction, we call it an endangered species. So the bald eagle used to be an endangered species, but now, since we protected them so much, they're built back up and they are no longer considered to be an endangered species. And as the population of endangered species declines, the species will lose genetic diversity, and that's important because you need to have a bunch of different genes in an environment, because might be kind of an easy example would be when thinking about if people are inbred, when you watch all those crazy movies like The Hills Have Eyes or Wrong Turn, you see what happens when you lose genetic diversity. A lot of unnatural things can start to happen. And another kind of thing that humans are doing is habitat alteration. So when land is developed, again, like building a shopping mall, natural habitats can be destroyed. And then development will often split ecosystems up into pieces, a process called habitat fragmentation. And so that would mean we had one big forest, and let's say they want to maybe keep the surrounding areas, but right in the middle, they just make a big highway come right through. So that might break up our different ecosystems, and that would be called habitat fragmentation. And then the smaller species habitat is, therefore, the more vulnerable it's going to be to further disturbance. So if you cut down its area, it's going to be contained to that one little area. Something else happens, they're not going to be able to escape. They're just going to be kind of susceptible to whatever is going to come to them. And then kind of another kind of thing that goes right along with habitat alteration and kind of with the extinction as well is the demand for wildlife products. So throughout history, humans have pushed some animal species to extinction simply by hunting them for food or other products. So right now a big one is elephants. People want their tusks because they're made out of ivory, and so that is a big threat to the elephant populations right now. And then another one is sharks. There's a lot of sharks who, there's people that they catch them, they just simply chop off their fins because they actually make soup out of them, and then they throw the rest of the shark back. So there's a lot of things going on right now, that's just to name a few, that are kind of pushing species to extinction. And today in our U.S. endangered species are protected from hunting, so there's a lot of strict regulations when it comes to hunting an endangered species. You could find yourself with a huge fine or possibly thrown in jail as well. And then the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, this banned internationally trade in products derived from endangered species. So it did make it illegal across the entire world to sell anything that could have come from an endangered species. People still do it, however, but there are very harsh penalties for messing with endangered animals. And then pollution is obviously going to be another threat to our biodiversity because, again, these animals used to living without any humans whatsoever. They just live in their natural environments. When we come in, these chemicals can cause serious problems, and one of the most serious problems occurs when toxin compounds can accumulate in the tissues of organisms. And so one example is DDT, as one of the first pesticides, is a very good example of how toxic chemicals can build up inside the tissues of living things. And for a long time, however, this pesticide DDT was considered harmless, so make sure you write down what DDT is, because that's going to be an important thing to know. And it drained into rivers and streams in very low concentrations, so didn't think it was much of a problem. However, there's two very dangerous properties that this pesticide has. First one, it is non-biodegradable, which means there's no living organisms that can break it down, so it'll always be there inside the rivers once it gets there. And once it is picked up by organisms, it can never be eliminated from their body. So once it's stuck in there, once it gets in there, it's stuck. It's no way it can be broken down. So we're going to talk about the problem that causes in our next video, so let me know if you have any questions.